Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's sales user webinar. We will be covering creating your 2025 prospecting plan and setting sales goals. My name is Michelle, and leading the way today is Samantha Perry. At the end of this webinar, you'll be able to easily review reporting for the past and upcoming year, work through opportunities and jobs that are ready to be closed out, use data to set sales and RMR goals, create prospecting activities and monthly goals, and fill your prospecting pipeline and dashboard. As always, we want you to get the most out of your time today. So if you have any questions at any time throughout the webinar, don't be shy. Send it in on the question chat. Even if it's because we've gone too fast and you want to see or hear something again, let us know. We have a lot to get through, so let's get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Well, welcome everyone. We have a packed house today. Excited to see that for the prospecting webinar today. And so we are going to go through A to Z setting up a brand new prospecting plan. So for those of you that have never done it before, we're going to cover it. And for those of you setting up your plans for next year and maybe have already been using it up until now, maybe you'll learn something new and be able to kind of follow along to set up your plans for the following year. So there's kind of twofold. I did want to talk a little bit about prepping ahead of time to set up your prospecting plan, whether you have been using WeSuite or maybe tracking your sales on some other tool, kind of looking historically at what you have sold, quarter over quarter, the size of clients, your target clients. Some of you do these activities as a team, some of you do these activities individually. Others may be managers that assign their sales team prospecting plans. I've also seen some people use this heavily for new hires that don't have any book of business yet. So I'm going to try to cover everything and feel free to ask questions as we go. But the first learning objective really is to look at your reporting currently in WeSuite from the past year to see kind of where your numbers were and what you're likely to hit again. And then you probably also worked with your sales managers on what your quotas will be for next year. So you're going to want to have all of that in hand. And then we also have some preparation sheets that you can use to kind of brainstorm what your prospecting plan is going to entail, and then you'll be able to plug it all into the software. So we have done some full-blown webinars about all of the feature sets that the reporting covers, and there's also pretty thorough videos on our Teachable site. So I won't go through all the ins and outs, but a good place to start is the WeOpportunity and WeEstimate URGs, which are really just, it stands for Universal Reporting Grid, which really just allows you to create your own custom views of, I think we've 100 different data fields that you can report on. And so I've saved a view called Sam's Pipeline View. And so you can save as many report views as you want. So of course, this is my demo system and I've saved many, many over the last years. But this view is saving the time frame, the filter, which is, am I filtering by whether something was created during this time frame or updated within this time frame or sold within this time frame. And then, of course, these statuses, which I'm only reporting on these pipeline statuses, but I could report on closed and lost as well. And then if you are able to see other people's stuff, this Select My Employees would allow you to see other people's data as well. Now, in my system, I am using a few other people so that you can see a little bit more. So I'm looking at year-to-date 2024, all open leads that have been touched within this past year on my sales team. And it's showing me a summary, which is just a high-level overview of quantity of leads within different statuses and their estimated values. And then when I move to the details tab, I can drill in a little more thoroughly into the actual details of all of those leads. And this is where you could customize much more granularly on the data that you want. So in this case, I'm only reporting on, these 10 fields. And so I want to see the owner, the job number, the last time it was touched, the customer's name, the title of the job, my estimated close date, and then I have the actual values. Other sales price will capture the value if it's not been sold yet. Actual will capture it if it has been sold. So in this particular report, I'm not running on sold, so I don't need the actuals in here. And so based on this, I can quantify kind of what is in my pipeline now. I may also want to run a report on what I've sold year to date, which I'm going to do next. And that's going to help me build my prospecting plan for the following year. Now, this is also going to help show you, like I could change the time frame and run a few different reports, or I might just export this whole year to Excel and then break it up by quarter. I was just doing this exercise with my team to say, okay, which quarters are the busiest. And so if I have a quota for the year, we actually allow you to break up your quotas quarterly within the software that add up to your annual quota on both an outright and the RMR side. And so you might set yourself different goals for what you might close in the first quarter versus the second quarter. So if I'm happy with this view, and so I can do a few other things, right? Maybe I want last updated in the front, and I personally like to filter or sort by last updated. So here, if I filter it this way, I can see, okay, I haven't called this guy since November 20th, hit the pencil here, add a note, left a voicemail, they went with someone else, something like that. And I use this as my to-do list to run down all my opportunities, sorted by, the last time I touched it, or maybe I'm using my tasks or various other tools that you can use. And so this is kind of helping me for the low-hanging fruit for what I think may either close by the end of the month, or I may put on my forecast for January, February. So I'm going to update this view, which is the save, but if I'd done this for the first time, I would hit add view. And now next time I come back to this report and I pull up Sam's pipeline, I'm going to see that view that I built. Now, another view that you probably want to build is your year-to-date one sales. So here, the only difference is I'm only filtering up by the sold filter. And so I can see our team has closed 44 leads this year. Their estimated value from the outright side and the RMR side. And then again, I can drill down into the details side, in which case maybe I do want actual, but I don't want other. I don't need estimated close date. I want to use sold date. And so you can use, different but similar fields for the sold view, because now these are actually sold leads. So I'll go ahead and update that. So any questions about running reports within WeSuite for your historical data to see kind of how you did against quota this year and prepping for quota next year? No? Okay.
Looks like we're all good.
All right, great. So I'm going to move along to the worksheets, which would be step 2 here. So within our user academy, you will see under the WeOpportunity training videos a whole course just about prospecting. And so you can watch back today's webinar, or you could take this course, which is, little mini videos, 4 minutes each, that are going to go through everything we're going to go through today. But you'll see at the end of the class, there are some downloadable worksheets. And so I would advise downloading these and printing them and having them either with yourself or maybe doing an activity session with the team to start laying out what you're going to do for your prospecting plan. So there's 2 worksheets. The first is discussing what are the activities that you are going to do every month, or maybe there are certain months of the year, right? I go to ISC West every year, and so from January to March is heavy ISC West prospecting time. And so you're going to actually list what are the activities that you're going to do on a recurring basis, how often are you going to do it, and what is the goal for how many leads or how many appointments you want to land. So for example, I worked with a team that they host webinars that they invite their clients to upsell some of the different vendors and manufacturers that they work with. And so they have in their goals that they're going to host a webinar and they're going to invite so many people. and then they hope to get so many leads out of that. Or more classic example, I'm going to do 100 cold calls this month, and I think I'll get 20 appointments from that. And so some of it may be a shot in the dark if you've never done this before, and some of you might have a good idea of what your conversion rate is, or probability of, if I knock on 10 doors or do 10 cold calls, I'll likely get a 15 to 20% hit rate. And so you're going to set that. And it is kind of one of those set it and forget it, right? You'll put in some goals, start tracking against it, and it is going to help you to better understand what that ratio is. Are there areas that you could improve? Maybe someone else is doing a similar activity. They're door knocking, they're cold calling, and they're getting a higher conversion rate than someone else. Some people have used that as an opportunity to say, well, hey, here's what Ryan is doing that maybe you could put into your process to kind of up your conversion rate. Or maybe this is just not a pond that we should be fishing in. And so the system is going to literally tell you those things as you start tracking. So that's worksheet number 1. And so again, it's just brainstorm, throw things up on the wall, see what sticks, and then you can decide what you want to actually enter into the software. All right, step 2 is going to be the quota worksheet. And some teams are already kind of doing something like this. You're basically going to take your quota for the year and then break it up into kind of bite-sizable chunks of, my quota for the year is $1 million, right? And so how am I going to get to that? Well, I could sell $1 million sale and be done, right? But the likelihood of that is not high, right? So what are maybe the t-shirt sizes or the customer profiles that you are working with, and put a dollar value in there for an outright sale and for the recurring side. And so I often will put kind of a small, medium, large. You'll see here we've kind of put squirrel, deer, elephant. If anyone's taken Sandler sales training, we took a lot of inspiration from that playbook. And so, my small sale might be someone else's whale sale, right? It's really very personalized to you and your client base and what you sell. And so we're going to go through and plug this into the system next. But again, this is a worksheet to just kind of let you map it out. So you'll put in your annual quota for outright and recurring if you have one or both, and then break down your sales into anything from a penny to here is what you would consider a small sale, and then put your threshold for medium, large, and whether you're going to end at large or some people put a 4th category for extra large, you just don't want to have any end number. You want to kind of leave that open so it'll encompass anything over that number. And then in addition to that, you're going to also enter in how many of each of these sales will get you to your goal, right? I could sell 4 $250,000 sales, and then I'm going to get my $1 million quota. Okay, so I definitely recommend downloading both of these workbooks to get you started. And then now let's move back over to the software. So I'm Joe, who already has a functioning prospecting plan. I'm going to log into a new fake user in a second to start from scratch. But here's what those categories are eventually going to look like. Joe's sales are anything from $1 to $25,000 is a small. And then the medium is 25 to 100, 100 to 500, 500 to $1 million, and anything over $1 million is a this Bronco size sale. And I do the same thing for the RMR. Now you'll see each threshold is starting at the very next penny. That way the system will make sure it catches everything and falls into a category. And what you're going to see is going to start to happen is you're going to put together, so Joe's got a $7 million quota, right? And so to hit that $7 million quota, this is how many I'm guessing of each t-shirt size sale I'm going to close with those average ranges that will get me to my quota, and it will automatically break it out quarter, monthly, and then weekly. And then here's my results that are coming from Quote Anywhere and WeEstimate. So because you're using the system, and again, you could set your plan now for 2024, and it'll still backdate everything that you have done up into this year. And you can see, okay, I closed 10 squirrels and 5 elephants, and you can kind of get a good understanding of what where are your sweet spots, what are the dollar values that you're very successful in. Then take that information and, okay, those clientele, who are they and what's the best way to prospect to them and get more of them, right? So it's telling me where my sales have actually ended up, what categories they're in. And I could have sold a squirrel size outright sale, but an elephant sized recurring, because they bought a lot of services, but not a lot of, parts and labor. Um, and then I can see how I'm doing against my goals too. So remember, this is a fake account. He doesn't win much, so he's not doing too great against his quota right now. Okay. And then the last or second half of this, after you set up your plan, and again, we're going to go through it from scratch in a moment, is to actually put in your activities and those goals. So let's say my goal for December was to do 100 cold calls and get 10 appointments, and I'm also going to knock on 100 doors and get 10 appointments. That's my goals for December. And then during the month of December, I would have been actually working on those goals and creating prospecting activities, which would then start creeping up towards my goal to see what I've, successfully completed. And if I get a hit, a prospect will turn into a lead, and that conversion from prospect to lead is what satisfies this appointment set. And so you'll see, I made 25 cold calls, but I hit my 10 appointments. So great, right? This isn't meant to be like, oh, well, Sam, you didn't hit your 100 cold calls. This is really meant to be, well, what is your conversion rate? Is this a successful activity or not? And had you made your 100 cold calls, it's probably clear that you would have made more than your goal of 10 appointments based on what happened with 25. And you can also see trends kind of month over month and quarter over quarter. And so we'll come back to that. So I just wanted to show you what it is going to look like. Here's kind of the fully baked cake at the end. And we're going to go back and start from scratch. So I'm going to log off, and I'm going to log into a fake user here that I made. Now, the first thing is that if you are not seeing the prospecting plan and dashboard section on your dashboard, just let your system admin know. They just have to give you the permissions in order to see this. This is not a paid for feature. This comes with WeOpportunity. It just might not be on for your user. And, I also just created this user, so there's no data. They don't have any quotas. That's why I have everything blank here. But if I wanted to see my quotas populating on my dashboard, you'll set that in the quota tab for every user in the WeEstimate or Quote Anywhere side. So let's start with the prospecting plan. And you'll see I have a blank slate. I've never used this before. And so I'm going to create my t-shirt size categories. So we're going to do exactly what we described in that workbook. I'm going to say anything from a penny to, let's say, $10,000 is what I'm considering small. And I'm going to say anything from a penny to $500 a month is what I'm considering a small recurring revenue sale. Now, if you want to put a description, you can. Some people are describing like what, who is this clientele? Residential, small business, custom homes, right? Maybe your generic residential is maybe up to a couple thousand, but your custom home is more that medium category, and that's going to be up to the 10,000 if that's the type of clients you're going after. Or maybe on the commercial sale, a small sale is really anything between 5 and 40,000. So really depends on the person and what, who your clients are. So that's level 1. Now we're going to create our medium category, and I'm going to say this is the 10,000 and a penny, and this will be up to 50,000. Just kind of making it up as I go. And this is going to be $500 and a penny, up to $1,000. Now, if you want to go this route, or if you'd rather go, the last category ended at 9,999, and then the next category starts at 10,000. Again, you just want to make sure it starts and ends every category on the penny so that nothing that, will fall into a gray area. I'm going to make my next one large, and this is going to be the 50,000 and a penny to, let's say, 100,000. And my RMR was 1,001. And oops, too many zeros here. And then the recurring, let's put at 5,000. Now I'm going to do an extra large category and just say that anything over that 100,000, so we'll do 100,000 and a penny, and I'm going to leave the 2 open, and I'm going to do the same thing for the RMR, 5,000 and a penny, and leave the 2 open. Now here I did something wrong with the ranges. 1,000 to 5,000, okay. Oh, I'm missing a 0 here. All right, so it told me something's wrong, like your range is falling within another range because I was missing a 0. So now I have it correct and I'm good. Okay, so yours should look something like this, and the last row should have the 2s both open. And again, I could have added more descriptions for all of them, but you don't have to. Now, if you've been using this tool and want to change your information, don't worry, it will pop up that thing. Like if I force that to happen again and I add another 0, it's going to say something like, I can't create the category, it's colliding with another category. So just ignore that and or what I've done is I've changed some of my rows to be like really low or really high just so I could recreate them. And so you can edit everything. And if you want to rejigger your size of your categories, you can do that and just go back after. It might just yell at you a couple times because it's confused as to why one category collides with another category. All right, so if we don't have any questions, which it doesn't look like we do, I am going to move on to setting the actual quota. So you do have to start by selecting the year. I'm going to go 2024. Now come January 1, 2025 will be available, but feel free to create 2024 if you haven't now, and then you can just recreate the same thing again for 25 if you want to do this work now. And once you hit show, it's going to show you the categories that you just made. Now, this is a lot like a tax calculator, 401k calculator. You kind of have to start by just throwing in some numbers and seeing what shows up. So I'm going to do like 1, 2, 20, 40, because let's say I assign, a lot of those size jobs. And they don't have to be matchy-matchy, right? I could say, yeah, I'm probably going to get a few of these and 4 of those and 15 of these and 30 of those. And it doesn't have to match exactly with the outright. And just again, think historically, maybe you're upselling just service. Maybe you have a lot of small RMRs because you add a lot of $10 a month here and there, but they're not doing small installations. It's just service. So maybe this is 50, even though you think you'll probably do 40 smaller installations. You'll hit save, and then it's going to spit out, look, wow, pretty good. I just had $1 million quota. I'm a little over that. Now, again, your company might say, hey, here's your quota, but you yourself might have your own quota, your own, commissions that you'd like to earn. And so you can kind of match this to your own goals, if they exceed the company goals. Now, if I'm happy with this, one more thing you have to do is show the report at the bottom. And that again would start to quantify this a new user, so she's never done any jobs, so nothing shows up. But if you have been using LeSweep throughout the year and you save this and hit show report, it's going to show you, okay, well, what you've done so far, you are doing good against that quota. And once all that's done, this add view will light up. This won't light up unless you've gone ahead and done show here, save quota here, and show report here. Now I can save this formally and say this is going to be, my 2025 prospecting plan. And I could make it my default. And so the next time I log in, it's the first thing I'm going to see. Or I could pick another plan. So some people, I've seen they have two plans. They have their company goals and then they have their stretch, like wish list goals. Others have put two different plans together because they have different types of t-shirt sizes and they wanted to put completely different rather than having 8 categories. Most people I see just have one plan for every year, and then you could just go back and see how'd you do against last year's plan and the year before, and you'll see that to start to stack up here. And if throughout the year you want to adjust any quantities, you just go ahead and make a change and then hit update view, and then you're good going forward. Any questions so far? Now would be a good time to ask about any of these t-shirt size and putting your quota together. And if not, it does look like we're pretty good.
Don't be shy, anybody. It's okay. I think if you ask some questions now, it might open up the floor for
Yeah.
other people that may be a little shy. So
Yeah, and
people
this
might
is
have
there's a lot of you in this webinar. So I'm trying to go slow and I can go back to anything that I need to go back to. So, okay, so now at this point, we're going to skip the reporting tabs for a second and go straight to the activities. Now, if you've never used this before, you'll have one default activity just called canvassing, and that will be sitting there. And you need at least one activity in here to start using the prospecting module. Now, I will make a point here. You don't have to do these categories, the t-shirt sizes, and the quota, to track. You could use prospecting by simply just recording prospecting activities, because what you're going to see is creating a prospect allows you to create a smaller type of lead or a less qualified lead. It's just a prospect. And so I'm recording it, I'm storing it in the system, but it won't go towards my actual pipeline. So you'll see what I mean by that in a second. But let's add 2 more records. I'm going to do some cold calling. And I'm also going to go to some trade shows and events. Now, again, this is very personal to everybody. Like, I will call 1,000 people, but I don't want to get on stage and teach a class in front of 1,000 people, right? Where my owner here will do quite the opposite. She doesn't want to do 1,000 cold calls, but she has no problem standing in front of 1,000 people and getting on stage and talking. So, I would say to sales managers to work with your salespeople's strengths. Obviously, as a salesperson, you would hope they don't have any problem going up and shaking hands with people and making cold calls and knocking on doors. But, others have other modes of doing it. Maybe they're reaching out through social. Maybe they have a builder network or a contractor friend that gives them a lot of referrals. Or maybe you want to track exactly what trade shows. So you're going to list 5 different trade shows. You can always add to this as you go. You just want to throw a few things up on the board here. And you may also assign your team that they have to, do at least this many activities every month, right? I talk to sales managers all the time, and while the phone's ringing and there's a lot of work to be done, they want their salespeople to be prospecting more. And this is going to be a good way to start that and hold them accountable to it, start tracking it. And again, it is kind of a set it and forget it type of thing. And then you can come back later and see how the results are. And it is quite eye-opening to see like, oh, well, that was actually very successful, or this led to this dollar, this size value of sales. So I'm going to do a lot more of that next month, and, to just use your time more wisely. So let's set the goals now. This is probably one of the more manual pieces to it. It is month over month, so you just have to do a few clicks here. But let's say you were doing this from the start of the year. I'm going to say January. I'm going to do, I'm going to knock on, let's say you want them to knock on at least 5 doors a day. That's 20 a week. That's 100 a month. And let's say you think 20 of those are going to maybe say yes. We'll do the same thing with cold calls and trade shows. I want to get 40 business cards, and maybe I'm going to get, 15 qualified leads out of that. Then you're going to hit copy goals, and you're going to do the same thing for February, March, April. Now you could just go ahead and keep copying and copying and copying. I'll do February, March, save, April, save. If you are doing this for your employees, you can copy it for your employees as well. But the other opportunity you have here is the goals don't have to be the same, right? I work with a salesperson that, they have certain events, right? At the end of the year for December, I go to the, policeman's ball, and my kid goes to dance class, and there's a trade show during this month. So those months might have higher or lower goals for certain categories than others. So if, for example, you go to GSX every year or ISC East to talk to some of the end users there, you might have goals for the couple months ahead of that, or the goal of that month is I'm going to go to that trade show and get 40 business cards, but that's not on your plan the following month. So I'm just going to finish through the year here, May, June, and just keep hitting save. So again, this is one of the more manual pieces, but it just gives you the opportunity to put in specific goals. And if you do bang this all out now, you don't have to come back and look at it ever again, at least until next year. So good. So now we're done here. And then you'll see the results of what your goals look like as a bar graph on the activity report. And now here's what Lisa's goals are for December. Now, again, you could have not set any goals at all. You could have just set activities, and the orange would be blank. But as you actually start doing activities, you will start seeing green bars creep up. So again, if you do no goals at all, you'll just start seeing what you actually did do. But I always think it's a good idea to have goals and to see how you're doing against them, and really track yourself there. So
I have a question, I suppose, regarding this, and I think a lot of users have questions as well. For those achieved, the green bar that would grow, does that populate when it's completed within a prospecting activity, or will that show up only if a lead was created off of that prospect?
It will only show if you've created a prospecting activity. So the way prospecting works is that it's treated differently as a lead. It's more of like a seed, whereas the lead might be like, the little, baby plantling that's already living, right? Like a lead in our world is, or, I like to describe it as it's come inbound to the company, or for, it's a current customer or something of that nature, right? It could be self-generated as well, but what we want to do is say, rather than filling your pipeline up with 100 cold calls where 50 of those phone numbers might be wrong, or someone says that they're not interested, right? It gives you an opportunity to just say, yep, I made 100 cold calls to all these people, and so they're kind of ice cold. And then if I get some interest, I convert it into a lead, which is what satisfies this appointment set. So I'm going to go ahead and record my first one. I'm going to go to the prospecting dashboard, and I'm going to do my first cold call. And so what's nice about the prospecting piece of it is that you don't have to fill in all the info you do for a lead. I'll hit new activity, and it's just this one little one-sheeter, right? I don't have to fill in customer, site, contact, lead source, origin, like all these things. I don't even know if this person's interested. So I'm going to say I did a cold call to, John Smith and John Smith Company, John Smith Contact. I'm going to ignore the fact that all this is already in here. This is his phone number. I don't have his email, and I'm going to say left voicemail. Now, let's say that's it. I'm just going to close it. I could follow up and set for myself, here it's saying I have a duplicate John Smith, so I'm just going to say okay. But if I follow up, it will ask me, okay, when do you want to follow up? Well, remind me to call him again, a week from now at the same time. And you may or may not want to add it to your Outlook calendar. right? So I'll save that. Now there's a follow-up, and we'll just close it. So now I've just created prospecting activity for 9991. And if I come back to my prospecting plan and I refresh this, it's going to say I did 1 of 100 cold calls. Yay, I'm on the board now. Now let's do another one. I'm going to say I did another cold call to Samantha Roger Smith here, and I'm going to say same thing here. I have her phone number, and I'm going to say called. Samantha would like to meet tomorrow at her company. Great. So I spoke to her and I got a positive, and we're ready to create a lead. So I'm going to hit create lead from this. I'm going to assign it to Lisa Mills because that's me. If you do have BD people where once they get a hit, they pass it to someone else, you can have that happen. So I'm going to say, great, I got a hit. I'm going to pass it to a sales rep. I'm just a business development person. And I'm going to save and open. And of course, I have a million Samantha Smiths in here. I need to come up with some new names. But now that's going to say, great, lead number, different than prospect number, 14099 was just created. And now what happens? It automatically turns my prospect into a lead. It filled out what I did enter so far, and it defaults the source as a prospecting activity. So I will get credit for the fact that I self-generated this lead. Now, again, if you don't use prospecting or don't, haven't up until this point, you could have always just selected lead source prospecting activity. But the big thing I'm trying to get across here is that you don't have to do all the work it takes to create a lead. Under prospecting, you just have this nice little one-sheeter. It's also in the mobile app on the phone, very easy to go through. You could have met someone on the street, typed in their contact info, and from their contact card in the app, hit create prospect, and now you've logged that as an activity. And you don't, you see it, all that's required of me is the activity, the company, and the contact. If I have phone, email, address, I'm welcome to type it in, but I do a lot of like shorthand. I just do LVM all the time for left voicemail, or if they told me to leave them alone, I write DND. So now if I go back to the prospecting plan and I refresh this, I'm going to see I did two cold calls, and one of which converted into a lead. Now, actually creating it and converting it at the same time is great, but I could call, I call back John Smith next week, and I could open it up and add notes, or really you probably want to edit the entire thing. And I could say, yep, I did my follow-up with him, and, I want to complete that. But now I spoke to him, and he said, you know what, I am interested. So I'm going to say, great, now I'm going to convert it. So by clicking this lead create is when you're going to convert it from a prospect to a lead, and then it'll actually go into your funnel. So the reporting on prospecting, it's literally in its own little bubble. Think of it as the cloud above the funnel, and that only, if it qualifies, does it actually make it to that first tier of the funnel, which is when it would start as a lead. And then a warmer lead goes to opportunity, and then when you're ready to quote it, it goes to RFQ, and this regular workflow here. So, for those of you looking to just start somewhere, turning on the prospecting plan and dashboard and just putting in a few lists of goals or activities. So like, let's say I did another activity where I have, strategic partner, ABC contractor. And I'm not going to put any goals, right? Goals, I'm just going to leave 0. But if I go ahead and now say, well, that contractor gave me a lead, and I have, ABC Towers, which again, I use the same stuff over and over, so I'm just going to do this. And we're going to do Vicky trailer. And I'm going to say, John sent me their info, new building, downtown. And I'm just going to save it and just log it as, a possibility. I have to pick my prospect activity strategic partner. So now it's just there in limbo. It might happen, it might not. It's a prospect. And if I go to my plan and I refresh this again, I'm going to see I did something for the contractor. There's just no goals. So if you don't set goals, it's okay, just as long as you have one activity type to work with. It could just be prospecting. You don't have to get as granular as the detail that I put here. But what is nice is then when we run the report back, you could see, okay, what was your conversion rate of all these different activities? What t-shirt sizes did they fit into? And so you can really start gaining a lot of good insight around what you're doing and the discipline that you have around prospecting and what's working, what's not working. And, for the things that are working, I'm going to do a lot more of that next month and hopefully, gain a lot more leads. So I'm going to log out of Lisa and I'm going to log into Joe to start to show some of the reporting because he actually has data to work with. And so we'll go back to the prospecting plan. And so a few things under the reporting, right? The activity report was showing me this month. But if I wanted to see all my reps for the month of December, let's see how they're all doing this month. And if I have this show my employees button, I can see Joe's not done anything. John and Alex haven't done anything, right? And so again, your people will have stuff in here. Or John, he put in a ton of different activities that he's going to do versus Alexandra just has canvassing, and that's her only type of activity. So you could see everybody's plans can be unique, and then you would see their goals in orange and the results in green. So I could see by month, I could also see quarterly, yearly, weekly. So if I did for the whole year, I can see Joe's goal was to do 700 cold calls. He only did 11, but he got eight appointments. So again, this added up all the goals from all the monthly goals I put in for the year and then what they've actually achieved and then that conversion rate. And I really meet with managers about this. It's not about like, well, you only made 720, not the 750, right? You failed at your goal. That's not the point. The point is, are we getting the conversion rate? Are the appointments coming in? What is that conversion rate? And how can we make that better? In addition to that, then you might come back and say, well, let's look at the activity of what the dollar value was of these types of sales. So let's look at 2024. And so Joe and Jack, because I have, just 2 users on for more data, they won 35 jobs this year. And when it's blank, no prospecting activity, that means those leads started as leads. It's skipped prospecting. So if you go straight to create lead or create job, it still considers it a one job. You won against your quota. It just did not come from a prospecting activity. And if it did come from a prospecting activity, you're going to see one of my 35 jobs came from prospecting and what was the value of it. Now, this particular one that I sold was didn't have any value. So let me go back to 2020. Okay. So let's say this was this year, and I'm going to turn off Jack just to make it even clearer. All right. So here's Joe of 2020. He won 27 sales. 25 of them were not prospects. They either started as leads or started as jobs, or let's say he was very diligent about outgoing. I start prospecting, incoming is leads. I can see 25 incoming leads, and 2 were outgoing and were prospecting activities. 1 was from calling key accounts, and 1 was from door knocking. And then what was the dollar value of those, right? And so this would show me what my t-shirt sizes are. So let's say you won 10 jobs door knocking and 10 jobs going to trade shows, but you can see that the trade show leads were only $5,000 jobs and the door knocking leads were $30,000 jobs. They were both successful. I got 10 jobs sold in each, but one had a higher gross value than the other. So maybe that's what I'm going to spend more of my time doing. And so these are kind of some of the metrics and the KPIs you can take from. And what I like is that you could have never used this tool before and just plug it in what you've done this year, what you did last year. So you can still preset plans for this year and last year, and it will show you this data so you could start helping to target out the roadmap going forward for next year. So I know there's a lot of moving parts to this, so I just want to take these last few minutes just to answer questions if there are any. But just to kind of reiterate, if you want to start ground level, turning on this plan and setting up at least 1 or 2 activities for the team, they can right away just start going to the prospecting dashboard and recording all their outgoing activity as a new activity. So here you can see Joe done a ton of cold calls over the years, and they're all just sitting in limbo right now, right? They're not in my pipeline. They're not qualified to move to leads. These are just cold calls. And so I could keep running down this list and say, well, let me call Bravo Towers again. And I'm going to say, I'm going to write a note and I'm going to say, left voicemail again. And I'm going to keep going down this list until I get a hit. If I do get a hit, I will convert it to a lead. And then that's where it will kind of be business as usual for those of you using WeOpportunity pretty heavily, right? I just created lead number 14100. And I can pick up from there with completing the rest of the stuff required that a lead actually needs once it gets to this point. If you want to take it a step further, put goals against those activities. It's how many times are you going to do the activity, and then how many appointments do you want to get from it? And then that will start to track on this user activity report. And then lastly, if you do want to set your t-shirt sizes and how many of each type of customer t-shirt size do I need to start tracking down? And so I can have a number in my head like, okay, I need 40 small sales this year and 5 mediums and 2 larges in order to hit my quota. Start breaking that down into digestible chunks. And then how am I going to actually get to these people with the prospecting activities? And so that could be kind of the last step if you want to set it. But what I do like is once you set all this up, it's done, and you can just start recording against it, going forward for the year.
Sam, I have a question from one of the team, from one of the users. They wanted to know how to actually turn this on and make it available for their team to build their own prospecting plans.
Sure. So under settings, you're going to go to group rights. So we're going to go through a lot of this on our January webinar. But just like WeEstimate, there are groups. Users belong to groups, and then those groups can have certain permissions. So you could have like a sales group, technician group, admin group, right? And these groups have different permissions of what they can see or do in the system, and what may be required of them. So let's say you created a group called sales, and then in that group, these are the permissions that they have. And so there's a ton of different group rights, but the ones you're going to want is prospecting dashboard. You want to give them access to it. So turn it on for the sales group, as well as the prospecting plan. And you'll have to hit edit and save just to make sure that that sticks. And then the plan, you want access to it. So we'll edit it, give it access to sales, and then save. So now anyone in that group will be able to see those 2 tabs. In addition to the access, you also have the fields that you as an organization want required or not. So contact fields, I did not require anything. They don't have to put in anything, but let's say I need at least a phone number. So I've now required phone number. But if I don't have email, I don't have title or contact, that's fine. And again, required for the sales group. The next one would be location. And if it's required, they put site address, go ahead, or you could leave it all unrequired. And then lastly, if you do want to allow the team to export to Excel, That button is located here on the prospecting dashboard, export to Excel. So let's say you've cold called your butt off and you've got 2,000 cold calls and phone numbers and emails in here, and you want to export that to Excel and email blast them or do something else with it. You can allow you turning on this button, or you might not allow everyone to do that. You just give it to certain users. All right. Any other questions? If not, then I think I'm good to wrap up. And um, I would really advise going, watching back this webinar, but you can also take the class in the Teachable, and it goes through everything we went through today, tab by tab. It has those downloadable workbooks if you want to use those. And yeah, happy selling. Hope you guys had a successful 2024 and gearing up for 2025.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you've learned some good information to take back for yourselves and share with your teams. If you need to refer to this webinar again, it will be posted on our website by this time tomorrow, or on our website under Education, Training Webinars. Don't forget to mark your calendars for our webinars next month. January's System Admin webinar is going to be on how to configure WeOpportunity groups, rights, and data lists. And that will be on Tuesday, January 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then for our January sales user webinar, this will be on WeOpportunity 101, lead creation and management. And that will be held on Tuesday, January 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great rest of the year. And we'll see you next year.